Most people will waste 40% of their entire lives trying to convince idiots that water is wet, fire is hot, and the sky is blue. They'll spend decades explaining obvious truths to people who have made a career out of being professionally wrong. They'll exhaust their mental energy, destroy their peace of mind, and sacrifice their potential. All for the approval of individuals who couldn't find logic if it came with a GPS and a personal guide. The tragedy is not that stupid people exist. The tragedy is that intelligent people keep volunteering to be their unpaid teachers, while you're busy proving your right to people who will never admit it. Your competitors are busy building empires. Your dreams are collecting dust. And your destiny is waiting for you to stop wasting time on battles that were never meant to be fought. You know what the biggest waste of human potential is? It's not lack of education. It's not lack of opportunity. It's not even lack of resources. The biggest waste of human potential is spending your precious life force arguing with people who have already made up their minds to be wrong. I want to tell you about a man I encountered just last month. This man stood at a traffic intersection for 30 solid minutes, yelling at a red light. 30 minutes. He was furious that this traffic light wouldn't cooperate with his schedule. He screamed at it. He gestured wildly. He even kicked the metal pole. Cars were driving around him. People were staring, and yet he continued his passionate debate with a piece of metal and colored glass. Now, you might think this man was having some kind of breakdown, but I'm here to tell you that millions of people do this exact same thing every single day. They just do it with humans instead of traffic lights. They spend their valuable time, their irreplaceable energy, their God-given intelligence trying to convince people who have no intention of changing their position. Listen to me carefully. Your energy is not renewable on demand when you wake up in the morning. You have a certain amount of mental energy, emotional energy, and spiritual energy available to you for that day. Once you spend it, it's gone. You cannot go to the bank and withdraw more. You cannot call customer service and request a refill when it's spent. You have to wait until tomorrow to get more. And even then, you're not guaranteed the same amount. This is why every conversation you enter, every debate you engage in, every argument you participate in is an investment decision. You are investing your life force. The question becomes, what kind of return are you expecting on this investment? When you argue with someone who is committed to misunderstanding you, what return are you getting? When you try to explain logic to someone who has abandoned reason, what profit do you see? When you attempt to share truth with someone who has fallen in love with lies, what dividend does that pay? And I learned this lesson the hard way. Years ago, I spent hours trying to convince a colleague that 2 + 2 = 4. He insisted it equaled 5. I brought out calculators. I drew diagrams. I even brought in other people to verify the mathematics. And you know what happened? After 3 hours of discussion, he looked me straight in the eye and said, "Well, that's just your opinion." That day I realized something profound. Some people are not interested in truth. They're interested in being right. Some people are not seeking understanding. They're seeking validation for what they already believe. Some people don't want to learn. They want to teach you that you're wrong, even when you're demonstrably correct. This is when I discovered one of the most liberating principles in human existence. Intelligence recognizes when engagement is futile. A smart person knows when to walk away. A wise person understands that not every invitation to argue deserves a response. Think about this. Would you try to teach a fish to climb a tree? Of course not. You would recognize that the fish lacks the fundamental equipment necessary for tree climbing. It has fins, not legs. It has gills, not lungs, adapted for extended air exposure. The fish is perfectly designed for swimming, but completely unsuited for climbing. Yet somehow, when it comes to human interactions, we forget this basic principle. We try to teach people who lack the fundamental equipment for rational thought. We attempt to reason with individuals who have never developed the capacity for logical thinking. We exhaust ourselves trying to plant seeds of wisdom in minds that have become concrete. Here's what I want you to understand. This is not about superiority. This is not about thinking you're better than other people. This is about recognizing reality and responding appropriately. A farmer doesn't plant corn in concrete and then get frustrated when it doesn't grow. He recognizes that concrete is not suitable soil and plants somewhere else. Some people's minds have become like concrete. They are hard, impermeable, and resistant to new information. This doesn't make them bad people. It just makes them unsuitable soil for the seeds of wisdom you want to plant. Instead of wasting your seeds on concrete, find good soil. But here's where most people make their mistake. They take it personally when someone refuses to accept obvious truth. They think it's a reflection of their ability to communicate or their worth as a person. Listen to me. Someone else's refusal to accept reality has nothing to do with you and everything to do with them. When someone argues that the sky is green when it's clearly blue, that's not about your inability to point upward. When someone insists that fire is cold when they can feel the heat, that's not about your failure to explain temperature. When someone claims that water flows uphill when gravity demonstrates otherwise, that's not about your inadequate teaching skills. Some people have made a commitment to being wrong, and no amount of evidence will change their minds. Your job is not to force them to see. Your job is to protect your energy for people and purposes that matter. The traffic light never argued back with that man. It just continued doing what traffic lights do, following its programming, serving its purpose, maintaining its function. The light didn't take his anger personally. It didn't try to defend itself. It didn't waste energy trying to convince him that red means stop is the wisdom you need to adopt. When someone wants to argue with your obvious truth, become like that traffic light. Stay in your purpose, maintain your function. Don't take their resistance personally. Let them spend their energy while you conserve yours for something that actually matters. Now that you understand your energy is precious, let me tell you about the greatest chess player who ever lived, learning the most important lesson of his career. This grandmaster had defeated every opponent who challenged him. He had won every tournament, claimed every title, and mastered every strategy known to the game. One afternoon, while sitting in the park practicing his moves, a pigeon landed on his chessboard. The bird began knocking over pieces, scattering them across the board and the ground. The chess master tried to shoo the pigeon away, but it kept returning. Each time he reset the pieces, the pigeon would land again and create more chaos. Finally, frustrated beyond measure, the grandmaster decided to teach this pigeon a lesson. He set up the board one more time and made his opening move. The pigeon immediately knocked over half the pieces, defecated on the board, and then strutted around like it had won the greatest victory in chess history. In that moment, the chess master realized something that changed his entire approach to life. The pigeon was operating from a completely different reality. It had no understanding of chess rules, no appreciation for strategy, no concept of winning or losing in the traditional sense. Yet from the pigeon's perspective, it had dominated the board and claimed victory. This is exactly what happens when you engage with people who refuse to operate within the boundaries of reason. They knock over your carefully constructed arguments, mess up your logical presentation, and then act like they've won the debate. They're not playing by the same rules you are. They're not even playing the same game. You see, there are people in this world who approach every conversation like that pigeon approached the chessboard. They have no interest in understanding the rules of rational discourse. They don't care about evidence, logic, or truth. Their only goal is to create enough chaos and confusion that they can declare themselves the winner. When you recognize this pattern, you have two choices. You can keep trying to teach the pigeon to play chess, or you can accept that pigeons were never meant to be chess players. One choice leads to endless frustration and wasted energy. The other choice leads to peace and productivity. But here's what most people don't understand about this situation. The chess master didn't hate the pigeon. He didn't think the pigeon was evil or worthless. He simply recognized that the pigeon lacked the capacity for the activity he was trying to engage in. The pigeon was perfectly good at being a pigeon. It was just terrible at being a chess player. Some people are excellent at their core functions, but completely inadequate for intellectual engagement. They might be wonderful at other things. Perhaps they're great parents, skilled workers, or loyal friends. But when it comes to rational discussion and logical thinking, they're like pigeons on a chessboard. This recognition is not cruelty, it's clarity. When you stop expecting pigeons to play chess, you stop being disappointed when they act like pigeons. When you stop demanding that people operate beyond their capacity, you stop being frustrated when they perform exactly at their level. Think about your own life right now. How many chessboards do you have set up, waiting for pigeons to learn the game? How many careful arguments have you constructed only to watch them get scattered by people who never intended to engage seriously? How much of your mental energy is tied up in trying to teach concepts to people who have no interest in learning? The wisdom here is not to avoid all difficult conversations. The wisdom is to recognize the difference between someone who disagrees with you and someone who is incapable of engaging with your ideas. Someone who disagrees might challenge your position with counter evidence, alternative perspectives, or logical objections. Someone who is incapable will simply knock over your pieces and strut around claiming victory. A person who disagrees with you will say, "I think you're wrong, and here's why." A person who is incapable will say, "You're stupid." And anyone who believes what you believe is stupid too. One response invites growth and learning. The other response reveals the limitations of the person making it. When someone responds to your logical argument with personal attacks, they're showing you their capacity level. When someone answers your evidence with emotion, they're demonstrating their operational range. When someone meets your facts with fury, they're telling you everything you need to know about their ability to engage productively. The chess master learned to save his energy for worthy opponents, people who understood the rules, respected the game, and brought skill to the board. He stopped wasting time with pigeons and started investing his time with people who could actually challenge him to grow. This doesn't mean you become arrogant or dismissive. It means you become strategic about where you invest your most valuable resource, your attention. You begin to recognize that every person isn't equipped for every conversation, and that's perfectly acceptable. Your job is not to force everyone to your level of understanding. Your job is to find the right people for the right conversations and engage accordingly. You know what separates master chefs from average cooks? It's not just their skill with ingredients or their knowledge of techniques. It's their understanding of when to engage and when to simply execute. Let me tell you about Chef Rodriguez, a man who had spent 20 years perfecting his craft in one of the finest restaurants in the city. One evening, a customer sent back his order of vanilla ice cream with a complaint that shocked the entire waitstaff. The customer insisted that the ice cream should be served hot, not warm, not room temperature, hot, steaming hot. The waiter tried to explain that ice cream, by definition, is meant to be cold. The customer became furious and demanded to speak with the chef personally. The chef said to his principal, the chef became furious and demanded to speak with the chef personally. Now, most chefs would have marched out to that table, ready for battle. They would have explained the basic physics of frozen dairy products. They would have lectured about culinary standards and the fundamental nature of ice cream. They would have engaged in a heated debate about temperature and food science. But Chef Rodriguez was different. When the waiter explained the situation, the chef simply nodded and said, "Heat up the ice cream." The waitstaff looked at him like he had lost his mind. "Chef, You can't heat up ice cream. It will just become soup. Rodriguez smiled and replied, then serve him soup. The chef took the vanilla ice cream, placed it in a pot, heated it until it became a warm, creamy liquid, and sent it out to the customer. The customer took one spoonful, immediately realized his mistake, and quietly finished his meal without another complaint. What happened in that kitchen that night was pure genius. Chef Rodriguez understood something that most people never learn. Reality is the greatest teacher. And sometimes the best argument is no argument at all. Instead of wasting 30 minutes explaining why the customer was wrong, he invested 3 minutes showing him. This is what I call the energy economics of engagement. Every time you open your mouth to argue, you're making a withdrawal from your energy account. Every time you try to convince someone who has already decided to be unreasonable, you're spending resources you cannot get back. But when you let reality do the teaching, you preserve your energy while achieving the same result. Think about your own life. How many times have you exhausted yourself trying to convince someone of something they could learn for themselves through experience? How often have you argued with people about consequences they could discover simply by living with their choices? Your mental space is like a private mansion. You are the owner, and you decide who gets invited in. Some people deserve a tour of every room. Others should be kept on the front porch. And some people shouldn't even make it past the gate. When you argue with unreasonable people, you're essentially giving them keys to your mansion and letting them rearrange your furniture. Chef Rodriguez protected his mental mansion that night. He didn't let an unreasonable customer move into his thoughts and disturb his peace. He didn't allow someone else's confusion to create chaos in his clarity. He simply responded with action instead of reaction. Here's what most people don't understand. Silence can be more powerful than the most eloquent speech. Action can be more convincing than the most logical argument. Results can be more persuasive than the most passionate presentation. When someone demands that you justify obvious truth, you have a choice. You can spend your valuable time explaining why water is wet, why fire is hot, and why gravity pulls downward. Or you can simply let them experience these realities for themselves while you focus on more productive activities. The customer never sent back another impossible order. Not because Chef Rodriguez convinced him through argument, but because reality taught him what 30 minutes of explanation never could have accomplished. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to let them learn from their own experience rather than protecting them from the consequences of their choices. There's an old gardener named Marcus who tends the most beautiful garden in his entire neighborhood. Every spring, visitors come from miles around to see his roses, his vegetables, and his perfectly manicured landscape. But what most people don't know is the secret behind his success. And it has nothing to do with fertilizer or watering schedules. One day, a young man asked Marcus, "How do you keep your garden so perfect? Don't the weeds ever try to take over?" Marcus smiled and said, "Of course they do. Weeds grow in every garden. But I learned something years ago that changed everything. I never argue with weeds about their right to exist." The young man looked confused. So Marcus continued, "When I first started gardening, I would see a weed and get angry. I would curse at it, complain about it to my neighbors, spend hours researching why that particular weed chose my garden. I would have full conversations with those weeds, trying to convince them they didn't belong there." "And what happened?" the young man asked. "While I was busy arguing with the weeds, they were busy growing. While I was explaining why they shouldn't be there, they were spreading their roots deeper. While I was having philosophical debates about their existence, they were multiplying and taking over my entire garden." Marcus walked over to a small weed that had sprouted near his prize-winning roses. Without hesitation, without anger, without commentary, he simply pulled it out by the roots and tossed it aside. Then he planted a new rose bush in that exact spot. "You see," Marcus said, I realized that weeds don't care about my opinion of them. They're not interested in my arguments about why they shouldn't exist. They have one job: to grow wherever they can find space. My job is not to convince them they're wrong. My job is to remove them and plant something better in their place. This is the most liberating truth you will ever learn about dealing with difficult people. Some individuals are like weeds in the garden of your life. They show up uninvited. They consume resources that should go to better things, and they spread negativity wherever they take root. Your job is not to argue with them about why they shouldn't be there. Your job is to remove their influence and plant something better in that space. But here's the critical part that most people miss. You cannot pull weeds while you're debating with them. You cannot remove negative influences while you're engaging with their negativity. You cannot plant better thoughts in your mind while you're having arguments with foolish people. Marcus never got emotional about weed removal. He didn't take it personally when weeds appeared. He didn't waste energy being offended by their presence. He simply recognized them for what they were, removed them efficiently, and moved on to more productive activities. This is what choosing your battles really means. It means recognizing the difference between productive conflict and pointless confrontation. Productive conflict is like pruning a fruit tree. It might be uncomfortable, but it leads to better growth and greater harvest. Pointless confrontation is like arguing with weeds. It accomplishes nothing except wasting your time and energy. When someone brings drama to your life, you have a choice. You can spend hours explaining why drama is destructive, or you can simply remove yourself from the dramatic situation. When someone brings negativity to your conversations, you can argue about the value of positivity, or you can redirect your attention to positive people and positive activities. The gardener's secret is this: what you focus on grows. If you focus on weeds by arguing with them, you give them the attention they need to multiply. If you focus on the flowers by nurturing them, you create an environment where beauty flourishes and weeds have no room to grow. Your life is your garden. Choose what you plant carefully and remove what doesn't belong without apology or explanation. Let me tell you about Mount Everest and the greatest lesson it has ever taught humanity about dealing with opposition. For thousands of years, this mountain has stood majestically, reaching toward the heavens at 29,000 feet above sea level. Every single day, powerful winds assault its peaks. Storms rage against its surface. Blizzards attempt to wear it down. Weather systems that could destroy entire cities throw everything they have at this mountain. But here's what's remarkable. Mount Everest has never once argued with the wind. It has never defended itself against the storms. It has never tried to convince the blizzards that they're wrong for attacking it. The mountain simply stands. It remains unmoved. It maintains its position. And after every storm passes, there it is, still reaching toward the sky. Still magnificent, still unshaken. The wind comes and goes. The storms arrive and depart. The blizzards start and stop. But the mountain endures. Why? Because Mount Everest understands something that most people never learn. Your response to opposition determines your destiny, not the opposition itself. Think about this profound truth. The mountain could waste its energy trying to push back against every gust of wind. It could attempt to argue with every storm about why it deserves respect. It could spend its time fighting every blizzard that dares to challenge its presence. But instead, it chooses a different strategy. It simply refuses to be moved by things that cannot move it. This is the mirror of greatness I want you to see reflected in your own life. You are not at the mercy of every person who wants to argue with you. You are not obligated to respond to every criticism, every insult, every attempt to drag you into pointless conflict. You have the power to be like that mountain, unmoved by the storms of stupidity that rage around you. But let me tell you what happens when you truly understand this principle. About 10 years ago, I met a woman named Grace who had built a successful business from nothing. She employed over 50 people and had created something beautiful that served her community. One day, a competitor who had failed to build anything significant began spreading lies about her company. He told people her products were inferior. He claimed her employees were unhappy. He even suggested she was dishonest in her business practices. Grace's friends and family were outraged. They wanted her to fight back. They encouraged her to defend herself publicly. They suggested she expose this man's failures and prove him wrong. They were ready to go to war on her behalf. But Grace had learned the mountain's secret. She called a meeting with her entire team and said something that changed everything. We will not spend 1 minute of our valuable time arguing with someone who has never built what we have built. We will not waste 1 ounce of our energy defending ourselves to people who already know our character. Instead, we will spend our time making our products better, serving our customers better, and growing our company stronger. While her competitor spent months talking about Grace's business, Grace spent those same months building her business. While he was busy criticizing her success, she was busy creating more success. While he was focused on tearing her down, she was focused on lifting her customers up. What happened next was beautiful and inevitable. The competitor's business continued to fail because he was spending all his time focused on someone else's success instead of creating his own. Meanwhile, Grace's business grew by 40% that year. Her team became more united. Her customers became more loyal. Her reputation became stronger than ever. By the end of that year, people had forgotten what the competitor had said about Grace, but they couldn't forget what Grace had accomplished. His words faded into irrelevance, but her work spoke louder than any defense she could have offered. This is what happens when you stop fighting small battles and start winning the war of life. When you refuse to be dragged down to the level of petty arguments, you automatically rise to the level of greatness. When you stop defending yourself against every attack, you free up energy to build something worth defending. Here's what I want you to understand as we bring this together. Your peace is not negotiable. Your purpose is not debatable. Your potential is not dependent on other people's approval or understanding. You were created for greatness. And greatness does not have time to argue with mediocrity. Every moment you spend trying to convince someone who has already decided to misunderstand you is a moment stolen from your destiny. Every hour you invest in defending obvious truth to people who love lies is an hour that could have been spent creating something magnificent. The mountain teaches us that true strength is not found in fighting every battle, but in choosing which battles deserve your energy. True wisdom is not found in winning every argument, but in recognizing which arguments are worth having. True greatness is not found in proving your right to everyone, but in being so focused on your purpose that other people's opinions become irrelevant. So I leave you with this challenge. Become like that mountain. Let the storms of stupidity rage around you while you remain unmoved and focused on your goals. Protect your peace like you protect your most valuable possession, because that's exactly what it is. Preserve your power for purposes that matter and pursue your destiny with the confidence that comes from knowing who you are and where you're going. Stop arguing with people who have already decided to be wrong. Start building something so magnificent that your success becomes the only argument you need.